How can you future-proof your e-commerce business and your clients for AI search? That is the question I'm asking this week, and helping me answer it is Dena Warren, and we're going to talk all about e-commerce and AI. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, as always, Jack Chambers-Ward, and this is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest minds across SEO and all things search marketing. Of course, I am joined this week by the one and only Dena Warren, and we're going to talk all about e-commerce and AI and the future of e-commerce. We're going to get into agentic stuff. We're going to get into how LLMs understand products, how to optimize your product feeds and your product descriptions to make sure you're being accurately represented in AI search and LLMs, and plenty of other stuff. It's a brilliant conversation, and I'm sure you will very, very much enjoy it. Before we get to that, of course, please do like and subscribe and do all the usual YouTube stuff. Give us a review on Spotify, 5 stars, ideally, hopefully, please. And of course, rate and review on Apple Podcasts and any other podcast platform you like. I appreciate any and all comments, reviews, all that good stuff. I always appreciate you guys when you let me know what you're enjoying about the show and what you want to see from future episodes as well. So without any further ado, here is me and Dena Warren talking all about how to future-proof your e-commerce business for AI search. My guest this week has worked in SEO and e-commerce for over 6 years. They also have experience in both digital PR and events management, and they speak 3 different languages. She is the SEO lead at Techquity. Welcome to Search with Candour, Dena Warren.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming on, mate. It's a really appreciate you coming on. It's going to be a really cool conversation. We're going to dive into a lot of e-commerce stuff, and I think I mentioned this to you before we started recording when we were chatting on LinkedIn beforehand. It was kind of a bit of e-commerce stuff we've touched on a couple of times on the show recently, and I felt like this is a really cool topic to get into, as is always the case, AI, LLMs, and how that is affecting e-commerce and how we can future-proof our e-commerce businesses for AI. Right? I think that's a big topic to discuss, and I guess I kind of want to open it up with why you think this is an important topic to talk about at the moment.
Yeah, I think obviously AI has been such like a hot topic in the SEO industry for probably the past couple of years now. I mean, every sort of conference you go to, the majority of the talks are around this. But it's getting to the point now, sort of the past 6 months to a year, where clients are coming to us and saying, what are you doing? Sort of, I've seen an agency talk to me about doing GEO and what's going on with this. I want to be the top in ChatGPT for XYZ. And I think when it's getting that mainstream to the point where clients are coming to us asking what we're doing, we have to be, even though we are being proactive in the background, I think we have to really open these conversations up and be a lot more sort of open with clients around sort of what we are doing, and that what we're already doing is also helping.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We've found a similar kind of case here at Candour where you get a lot of clients kind of knowing to ask the question, but not really knowing what to expect from the answer, right? Like, I've heard of ChatGPT being a search engine, or I've heard of AI mode, or I've seen it pop up on my Google a couple of times, but I don't know the full details. And obviously they come to us as the experts, right, to have that conversation. But I think it's a really interesting point because AI has become such a mainstream topic that everyone is kind of experiencing it now, right? And we're all kind of trying to get to grips with it. And I find a lot of clients have that kind of initial introduction to it, but don't realize perhaps the impacts obviously we've seen on the industry, us being very in the technical side of things and in SEO, being very aware of what's going on. How do you think a lot of people are, I guess, do you think many people are preparing for this sort of thing? Do you think there has been a movement in the e-commerce space to think about this sort of thing? And then I guess we'll kind of get into some details and some strategies and some ideas in a moment as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about what can I be doing on my site more than I am now. But then I've found, especially in e-commerce, where there's quite a lot of competition for agencies, that some people are really selling a dream to clients. And I think like my approach is really, I'm very, very honest and open with clients about what is actually going to help. And I've found that sort of some people that they've come to me with like, oh, this other agency has done like a GEO audit, and they've come to me with all of these recommendations. And I think, you know, selling it for the sake of selling something. And I think there's quite a fine line between sort of what's actually going to help and push e-commerce forward and help these sites, and sort of what's going to make agencies money. And I think really like we need to be more honest with clients, and we need to say, look, this is actually going to help. This is just something that you would put a ticket in with a dev for because you want to put a ticket in with a dev, you know?
You never want to be doing extra dev work, right? Just for the sake of dev work. But you're totally right. I think a lot of agencies do have that not sort of kind of snake oil mentality, right? Of like, oh, we're going to sell you this thing. Like you said, we'll do a GEO audit or a AEO audit or whatever they're calling it, an AI audit, and see where you are with your prompts and stuff. And they'll suggest a bunch of different things and try and sell you services. And I guess we want to get into in this episode is actual practical things you can do to ensure your brand and your e-commerce site is being represented accurately in AI search, and how you can make sure your site is, being seen in the right way and seen for the right things. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll start there, right? With how can e-commerce sites ensure that their products and services are being accurately represented in AI search?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think there is a place for GEO audits and things. Like I have done those in the past. I just wanted to say that I don't think that
Of
it's
course. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, to make sure that your products are sort of being accurately represented, I think the main thing for me is product data. Sort of making sure everything's consistent everywhere. Sort of what's on the page is what's in your feed, is what's on Amazon and other marketplaces.
Mm.
Because sort of if you have discrepancies there, then that's not only going to affect sort of AI visibility, it's also going to affect your Google organic visibility as well. Another thing is sort of maximising the schema markup that you have, whether that's product schema, adding offer schema, review, FAQ schema, all of those. That's just an additional layer of information that you're pushing through your site. And the more information you give LLMs, the more they like the content, really. Another thing that I found really helpful is sort of user generated content. So reviews, pushing for reviews through email campaigns. And I know that a lot of these reviews, sometimes they're maybe not necessarily very useful to the end users. So maybe asking more leading questions in sort of these review campaigns, such as like, what's the use case for this? Sort of one of my clients, they are sort of pilot supplies. So it's sort of what plane are you flying for this? Sort of what cockpit size for sort of this like flight bag, etc. Because those are the type of questions people are going to be asking in AI, like which bag is best for a Boeing 737, for example. And if you have sort of actual user generated content of real people asking these questions and recommending this, that's way more valuable than anything you as a brand can say on site about your products.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think what you touched on there with Amazon and other marketplaces, and also the reviews and stuff, I think we're seeing the growth of the value, I'd say, of off-site references, recommendations, and data as well. Because obviously, we talk about off-page SEO or link building and all that kind of stuff for digital PR, which I know you've also worked in as well, has been a big talking point. But also, literally just ensuring you're consistent across that, and having, like, I love the way you put it there, of like thinking about the kind of questions people are actually asking and factoring that into your product data. The fact that I have been on so many product pages and I have a very specific requirement. Take the flight bag for a cockpit size example. I'm like, well, I know my cockpit is this size. None of the flight bags describe what they would work, how they would work in a particular size cockpit. So I have no way of comparing it. And I think more and more people are using things like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and Perplexity and all that kind of stuff to do that kind of product comparison stuff. I've
Yeah.
seen quite a few people do examples of like, create a comparison table of these products that suit these requirements, da 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 da, and it literally builds a comparison table including these columns, links to each product, all this kind of stuff. And I think you're absolutely spot on there, mate. If you don't include that information, you're not even getting pulled up in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that comparison content, I think it's so useful because that's sort of the majority of a lot of the prompts that we're seeing is comparisons, and it's the use cases, it's the real world examples, because AI is becoming, it's so hyper personalized that you have to know who your products are for and sort of explain that very clearly.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've totally done that, and I know I bring it up on the show quite a lot. The level of personalization, you're absolutely right, makes such a big difference. And even, I always say, you and I work in the same industry. We have similar kind of backgrounds and experience in terms of, in the grand scheme of the world, you and I both work in a very small part of a relatively like small industry in the grand scheme of things. But we're vastly different in so many different ways. We live in different parts of the UK. We have vastly different backgrounds in terms of our lives and our experiences and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like if you think about it on a very high level, like persona type thing, which obviously we've been doing in marketing for decades at this point. Yeah, just people who work in SEO, who do this, like, yeah, in theory, we both tick all those boxes. But as soon as you start drilling down into, and especially with things, obviously, Gemini and tying into the personal intelligence stuff, where they're pulling in your Gmail and your Google Photos data and all that kind of stuff, or literally just the memory of the LLM itself. If you turn on the memory function, like, oh, I know Jack is 35 and lives in Norwich and is vegetarian, so I'll recommend these particular things. That makes such a big difference. And I think you're absolutely right, mate. You need to really be aware of that when you're factoring in things like product copy and product information and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So if someone is thinking about, I guess, a brand new site or a migration or something like that in 2026 for their e-commerce, what do you think are those fundamentals? You mentioned sort of fairly sort of, I would say not necessarily fundamental stuff, markup and schema and things like that, but also basic product data. What are the essentials for you, do you think, for an e-commerce site to do well in 2026?
Yeah, so I do a lot of these actually with Techquity. So we're a sort of e-commerce development agency. So a lot of my time is assisting the devs with new site builds, site migrations, things like that. So this is a lot of I have a lot of the similar conversations with clients and developers. So the main thing that I try and drill down is, like you say, the structured data, having that from launch day, organization data, product data, FAQ, review data, all of that from launch. I think that's sort of one of the top things for me that I'd recommend. And as well, is it's the product copy. So a lot of e-commerce brands in the past have just used manufacturer copy, and you have the same product copy across 30 e-commerce websites. Like, that might have worked in the past with organic traffic if you've got really well optimized category pages and sort of great informational content as well to support that. But I think nowadays you really need to have sort of original product and category content where possible. Obviously, if you have sort of 10,000 products on your site, it's not always doable, but it's sort of changing from the same generic manufacturer copy. That would be sort of my number one recommendation. And as well, trust signals, I think, is a really big thing. I know we've been talking about it in SEO for a while, but ensuring you've got those reviews on site, you have sort of some trust boosters, you have star ratings, things like that. You have the delivery information and returns information sort of readily available as well. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I haven't heard that many people talk about the thing that I totally agree. You see it all the time, that just copying over the manufacturer description, right? And I have totally had that with clients in the past. I had a client a couple of years ago that was like medical supplies and sort of like, bulk buying things for businesses in terms of, first aid equipment and all that kind of stuff. And every single time you could literally copy and paste from the original, brand to then their kind of wholesale and retail version. Like,
Yeah.
this is word for word the exact same thing, same bullet points, same product images, same thing. Like, and it's coming from the company that made the thing. So unless you're doing something different, why would you outrank the original company that
Yeah.
sells it, right? That does it. And I think that is such a great point that not enough people factor in. And I think you can get into the details of, like, it's not just rewording it for the sake of rewording it. As you said just then, like, I think it's about bringing that original perspectives from customers, actual proper data from reviews or FAQs or whatever it is, to separate you from the rest of, if you're a reseller of a huge brand, why should people come to you instead of direct from the brand or another reseller as well, right? Another wholesaler. And I think that is a really, really great point. I think a lot of people sleep on. It's just kind of, yeah, we'll just auto populate, copy paste kind of thing, and just hope for the best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, there's the technical aspect as well, sort of making sure that the site's sort of crawlable, indexable. I think we're all sort of aware of the issues of JavaScript with AI rendering. So just making sure that sort of that critical content that you have is sort of it exists in the HTML. A good trick that I like to use is to just test the view source and can you see all of the key content on the page. Because if you can't see that when you're viewing the source, then AI is not going to be able to see that. And also sort of don't have key content like sort of pricing or any descriptions or product info like behind sort of an interaction that people have to interact to get that information, because then again, that's not going to be fed to AI either.
Yep, definitely. I've just totally seen that before as well, where you get I've almost like a drop down, the little accordion or kind of thing with, oh yeah, here are the options for prices. Especially with wholesale stuff, you can do bulk buying and price ranges and all that kind of stuff, and it's a drop down box to reveal that table. It's like, why are you not giving me the price straight away? Like, that is one of the most important things when it comes to product information.
Yeah.
Like, that factors into people actually making that decision. And I think you're absolutely spot on again with the JavaScript side of things as well. When it comes to what we've seen from people testing things like Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, even Gemini. Gemini seems to be, obviously, Google has the kind of backbone of handling JavaScript much longer than anyone else, pretty much at this point, in terms of crawling. Have you seen much of, and we've had some kind of I say hot takes, but fighting back from people like Cloudflare, right? Being like, we're going to block AI bots automatically unless you turn this off. And it's a big kind of, almost feels like a back and forth between some of the big hosting companies and then against the AI companies, as it were. Have you found a lot more clients are thinking about that sort of thing when it comes to AI bots? Are they talking about, God forbid we talk about LLMs.txt or anything like that? Have you found that kind of conversation happening with your clients?
I haven't found it with the clients so much. I think sort of technically wise, the majority of my clients, we tend to handle those conversations sort of in-house, but I am having a lot of those conversations with the developers. I think they're like sick of me talking about server-side rendering versus client-side rendering. I think that's a conversation I need to ban from the office now. But but yeah, I think like we are having a lot of those conversations. And sort of the Cloudflare thing, that was a big panic for me. I came in the office, I said, we need to check all of the Cloudflare because we use that for across all our sites. And it turns out it was just going to be automatically turned on for any new accounts. So all of the existing accounts that we had were fine and still indexable and crawlable. So yeah, I think everyone just needs to, like there's so much panic, I think, around AI at the moment, that anytime you see anything like on LinkedIn with those sort of alarm bell emojis, I think just go away and check and look at the evidence and look if there's a study about that. Because I think I'm guilty of it as well. We tend to just panic about things because things are changing so quickly. I think just taking a step back and thinking, oh, actually, I've looked into this and really it's only for this specific use case. I think that can really help, just sort of taking a breath before you go into full panic mode about any sort of new regulations or any new sort of product specs or anything that's going on.
Yeah, I think we all get kind of swept up with like chasing the new shiny thing sometimes, right? It's definitely been happening a lot in AI as well. And I love what you said there about having that just the fundamentals, right, when it comes to crawling and indexing. And it can be as simple as, product variant pages, if you're changing color or sizes and all that kind of stuff. I know Google has been talking about, canonicalization and stuff for a while now when it comes to product variants. And I know I've seen, again, coming back around to the personalized search, people are searching more specifically about the exact thing, using that conversational nature of LLMs and AI search to say, no, I want a size 12 red thing instead of just I want a thing. It can be a real kind of difference maker from my experience in more as a user, to be honest, as and a searcher than actually working with my clients. But have you found that kind of adjustment in the way people are searching, has that kind of factored into those conversations with clients, thinking about how specific you need to be with your product data as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a lot of sort of talk about feed optimization,
Mm.
especially in the sort of couple of years. I saw a really great talk at Brighton last year around product feed optimization. And I think sort of so when you look at the OpenAI product feed spec, compared to sort of the Google shopping product feed spec, and you compare the two, there's so many more that are sort of necessary for you to be able to submit that feed in OpenAI. And I think that just shows how people are searching much more personalized, sort of things like fabric and sort of sizing and things like that aren't necessary to have your Google shopping feed, but they are necessary for OpenAI. I think that there's sort of a clear shift in how people are searching. And I think trying to explain that to clients and ensuring that you have the most product data possible in those feeds. And I think as well, just sort of being a bit more, working a bit more closely with sort of paid teams as well, because while that
Mm.
feed work has traditionally sat with them and sort of they have that experience that maybe some SEOs who haven't worked in feed optimization have had before. So I think just sort of communicating clearly and saying, look, this is why we need more information. This is why we need to clean up the feeds, you know?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think most people think of shopping feed or the Google shopping tab as like, oh, it's all paid results, right? Like that has been the focus for so long. But it might be actually the talk to, was it by Alex Wright by any chance?
Yeah.
I had Alex on the show a couple of weeks before that talk. Funny, we kind of was like a pre-talk kind of podcast discussion. I've known Alex for a few years now, and yeah, very much highlighting like how important organic stuff can be in that shopping feed as well. And I think so many people underestimate the fact that you can, for want of a better phrase, rank in a shopping feed naturally and organically, even without having paid results. And I think even better that the example you gave there of like working together with your paid team to ensure, you can tackle it from both sides and you're having full coverage. And I think more of us are talking about that kind of all-encompassing, search strategy rather than just here's SEO stuff, here's PPC stuff, here's paid, here's organic.
Yeah.
Actually having both teams working together and understand, we can push this new product range in two different directions in two different ways that complement each other rather than just, targeting the same keywords and just essentially cannibalizing yourself with your own ads and stuff, right?
Yeah, I found that a lot more now working. So I've always worked in like traditional marketing agencies. Now I'm at a dev agency. It's very different, and I've never worked that closely with other teams before. And I think working that closely with the developers, it's sort of opened it up a bit more to working more closely with other teams as well, like paid. And I think sort of traditionally we tend to keep ourselves quite enclosed in our little SEO space, and I don't think we should. I don't think we should be doing that anymore.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to product feeds, then is there anything differently you've been doing or that you'd recommend when it comes to, what we're doing traditionally for Google shopping feed stuff compared to what we're seeing from AI search and LLMs?
Yeah. So we've actually been working on using the OpenAI product feed spec, and there's a
Mm.
couple of testers as well. So we've created sort of an internal sheet. So we use Aerocommerce as a platform for a lot of our e-commerce sites, and there's a sort of product feed builder. So we've been building an additional product feed for when agentic commerce is sort of rolled out. So we've been using I've been using that to sort of build the new product feed and ensuring everything that is necessary we have as standard in these product feeds. And I think just having that ready for when that is sort of rolled out and we're accepted in sort of the agentic commerce, I think that's something that's really helpful. So you're not sort of scrambling and rushing around to have that ready when the time comes.
Yeah, I think we covered this in our newsletter, obviously, a little while ago when the ACP, the Agentic Commerce Protocol, was discussed. And I know ChatGPT has started rolling out. Google confirmed they are doing their own thing as well with the UCP kind of things as well. And so much of, I think, what we're seeing from, I don't necessarily people, again, chasing the shiny thing, right? It's like, we're all off doing this particular thing and maybe neglecting some of the fundamentals. But I think for me, this is where it does actually change a little bit, right? You do actually need to think about how you are formatting and using your product feeds and things like that. Do you think sites need to be focusing on, one side in particular, or creating specific? I know there was a recent study about I think it was from Profound, about using Markdown instead of HTML to emphasize AI search and things like that. Do you think we need to be creating separate subdirectories or particular feeds or sections of the site that are AI focused essentially, or is it kind of making sure that your whole site is accessible and available?
Yeah, I mean, I've read sort of both sides of this. And I think sort of from my experience, I think really, I mean, LLMs have used sort of the existing content on the sites for all of their training data thus far. And I think that maybe just focusing on all of the existing content on your site being machine readable, authoritative, rather than just creating sort of these unnecessary pages built just for AI, where you can sort of risk sort of duplicate content, thin content. It can confuse existing search engines. You know, you don't want to do anything for AI that could risk damaging your sort of Google organic visibility, really. I think just sort of focusing on sort of clean, structured product data. I think that's sort of the way forward. I don't think we need to be going and creating all these new subdirectories and things for machines when really it should be human first.
I agree. I think it's real. Yeah, there's definitely been arguments on either side, right? When you're create a completely clean, easy to read product feed for AI, and I guess my question is like, why isn't your product feed like that anyway?
Yeah.
Like, if you need to tidy stuff and remove the rubbish, then do that. Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't that be also the rule for humans? I don't want all the rubbish. I'm just as valid of a customer as the AI is. Like, I
Yeah.
always find that argument kind of weird. And I get, obviously it's to do a lot with token optimization and stuff, right? To understand, you can present the same amount of information in fewer tokens to give crawlers and LLMs easier access and all this kind of stuff. But I think fundamentally you're absolutely spot on. If you're factoring in for users and you're factoring it in for AI, you'll be surprised how often those two align and cross over and overlap, right?
Yeah, and then when you're talking about crawl budget, really, if you're creating all these new, you're doubling your crawl budget for sort of Google to crawl your site. So really, it's negating the effects, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, yeah, I worry we're kind of getting into. I saw an example the other day. I don't know if it was real. It was a screenshot, but it was an e-commerce site that had, I think it was a subfolder that was like /AI. So like a whole separate addition to each category. So you'd get like categories / I don't know, t-shirts, but it would be AI /categories /t-shirts, and create an extra layer of subfolder there where it's an entire, essentially, subsite, an entire subdirectory of all the AI product stuff. I'm like, you're just doubling your work here, mate. Like, this seems mad to me. Like,
Yeah,
that must be so much more difficult to manage, right? You're now handling two different things at the same time when you could kind of do it all in one place.
I mean, It could be proven wrong. It could work. It could work really well, but I can't see a logical way that duplicating your content across the site wide is going to help you in any way.
You're just going to run into like cannibalization stuff, which is bad enough in a lot of e-commerce sites anyway, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned like manufacturer copy being a perfect example of that, and the product variant stuff. I've had that loads of times with clients where the variants or the differences aren't quite enough. It's literally just a size difference or a color difference, and so much cannibalization. I feel like that's not worth the risk. But again, people viewing and listening, let me know if you have got any experience with that stuff. I'm sure Dina and I would love to get into that and see if there are any genuine case studies. I've seen most of the case studies. The one I mentioned from Profound being the one about Markdown and stuff, being like, there's no negligible change, so don't change anything, don't go crazy, kind of thing, which seems to be sound advice. Like you said, don't chase the next cool AI thing. Kind of focus on actual quality, right?
Fundamentals first, yeah.
Exactly. To kind of get into, I know, another big topic that Google have been talking about a lot is multimodal search, whether that's Google Lens, Google Live, all this kind of stuff. They talk about it so much at the last couple of Google I/Os, and how much, I know Sundar Pichai loves to talk about, 1.5 billion people use Google Lens or whatever, like this seemingly impossibly large number. Are you factoring in that kind of multimodal stuff into your e-commerce strategies? And do you think that is something brands need to be thinking about going forward?
I think personally, I view it a bit like voice search when that was sort of a big thing that everyone
The
thought.
next big thing.
Yeah, the next big thing, voice search. 80% of searches are going to be on voice. But sort of there is an argument that that sort of AI is going to be used in sort of the imagery and things like that. And I have found that having sort of high quality product images with sort of use cases, and not just using the sort of standard manufacturer images, is helpful. Something I've found works really well is video content. I know we've been speaking about it quite a lot, sort of over the recent couple of years anyway, but sort of really demonstrating sort of the products that you have, just short product demos, someone sort of demonstrating what the product is, how-to videos, and sort of comparison videos that they surface not only in sort of AI, but again in organic. I think that's something that's really helpful. But yeah, just not using manufacturer images where possible, and having those sort of use cases. Like, for example, a piece of furniture in a real room can help AI answer queries such as sort of, I would like something like this for my small kitchen, you know? I think sort of having real world examples is the one thing I think would help in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant example of the kind of thing that ties into a lot of what Google has been talking about. I'm trying to remember, it was very recently they talked about the ability to essentially like customize a thing. So like you give, I think it's Gemini, a photo of like, this is the kind of party I want to host. And they use like a Y2K themed party kind of thing. And it can then break down, here's what you need from all the products to get the vibe of this photo of this party. And I think that is a brilliant point there, mate. Like we talked about the manufacturer copy, but here is the product on a plain white background, ready for, basically being green screened or just in a little light box or whatever. Fine. That gives you nice, clear angles and a clear view of the product and all that kind of stuff. But in context, I think you are absolutely spot on, makes such a big difference. And I know, if you see, I don't know, a particular piece of clothing or something, or a sofa in a room exactly there, like you can see, oh, right, that kind of works in this way. And that's what the feet look like in this kind of room. Or that doesn't actually go with that wall color, but sure, that's a choice, I guess. Like so many different little extra factors. And now with the combination of multimodal search and a kind of voice search and the way conversational search is happening on LLMs, people literally have a conversation with, I didn't really like that sofa, but how about we try this one instead, which is kind of voice search, kind of, sort of, maybe. But yeah, I think that's a huge point to really kind of emphasize, is that in context stuff can make such a big difference, and video stuff as well. You're absolutely right, mate. Seeing it in 3D, I've seen some sites do sort of like a 3D tour of a product. You know, the classic Amazon thing of like AR, put it in the room and you can do it. I've
Yeah,
never got that to actually work properly and feel legit. Like, that seems way too small or way too big or whatever it is.
yeah.
But I like the idea of it. I think it's a cool idea, and I guess it can be a really powerful thing. Again, as we said earlier, that will separate you from a bunch of other people selling similar stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think just having sort of, as well with the video content, not just posting that on the site, having that on YouTube, having that on other sort of user generated content sites and your social media as well, that really helps as well with the brand building. That's so important for AI too. Having content across sort of multiple platforms, that's sort of really useful.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a really interesting point Miriam Jessier brought up on the show a few months ago. There was a literal real world example of trying to translate a packaging of food to, understand allergens and all that kind of stuff, and the contrast between the text and the packaging, because it was one of those kind of eco brands where it's like, oh, it's kind of brown packaging, and the text is kind of a beigey kind of color, and we don't want to be too harsh, and it's all eco friendly and stuff. It meant that Google couldn't read the text.
Yeah,
So yeah, we talk about, machine readable sites. Yeah, packaging kind of needs to be factored into that as well. Like, you need
yeah,
to be aware of physically how you're presenting your products and how that can be seen through a camera lens of someone's phone pointing it using Lens or Google Live or whatever it is, and be aware of literally how readable and understandable your products are as well. And that's not something I would ever have thought of in a million years, to be like, does the world need to be machine readable now? Like, that's a weird thing. Like, think about the accessibility of the physical world around us, not just how we always think about it in, like, is the text readable? Do you have alt text? All this kind of stuff. Like, you actually need that in the real world now as well.
yeah. We're going to be living in the Matrix soon, I'm sure.
Mate, absolutely. Okay, so before we get on to, you touched on, we're going to get on some agentic stuff, which I think is very interesting as well. Is there anything, you said you have a lot of conversation with developers, a lot of those kind of maybe difficult conversations of filtering out a lot of the shiny stuff and the crap as well. Is there anything you think SEOs are chasing that is actually probably a kind of a waste of time when it comes to having those conversations with developers? You mentioned like just doing a ticket for ticket's sake, right?
Yeah.
How do we avoid doing that as SEOs? Is there anything we need to avoid?
Yeah, I am firmly in the LLMs.txt doesn't do anything. Um, I think it's sort of, I've had people sort of recommend that to me in the past. There's very little evidence that it's even visited or adhered to in the real world. And it's not like a standard like robots.txt is. We can't just make something up and decide it's a standard. I think unless sort of the big sort of companies are using it, then we can't recommend that. I actually trialed an AI visibility tracking software tool a couple of weeks ago, and sort of the client I gave them, they gave me all the prompt tracking. It was great. They gave me one recommendation at the end, and they said to improve your AI visibility, add LLMs.txt to your website, and that's going to directly improve your AI visibility. And I thought, like, there's people who sort of don't work in our industry. Like, if a client has gone to this agency, they're going to think that's helpful, and they're going to think that's actually going to improve their visibility. Whereas there's no evidence whatsoever that adding a TXT file to your website is going to improve your visibility whatsoever. And I think sort of, I don't know if it's a lack of understanding or a lack of awareness, or if people have just heard someone say it's useful once and then they're just repeating it. But sort of everything I've seen, and I've done sort of a lot of looking into this and reading a lot of people's takes on this, I just haven't seen any evidence that it's used, you know?
Yep, absolutely. I think, yeah, there's been quite a few different studies, and I know there was the funny thing of Google put LLMs.txt on their own documentation page, which was funny. It was quickly taken down, so factor that in as well. But yeah, I think you're totally right, mate. There is that real kind of I think a lot of agencies get into, again, not to talk bad about other agencies, but we have a bad reputation for a reason. So many people do that kind of, we create work to just make you spend the money. Sorry, clients. Like, there's not actually an actionable recommendation there. It's just, yeah, just do LLMs.txt and you'll be fine. Like, problem solved, mate. Yeah, exactly. And I think you're absolutely spot on. You get those kind of audits or the tools that end up with, yeah, that's our main recommendation. Like, yeah, because you don't know what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
you're just kind of winging it a little bit and hoping that, as you said, a client isn't knowledgeable enough or doesn't know enough or doesn't have someone like you in the back going, no, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Like, I had an example the other day. My partner works in house and they had an agency contact them and be like, hey, we want to do an AI audit. And I was like, what kind of things are they talking about? And I was like, yeah, tell us 5 prompts you want to rank for. And I'm like, nope, don't trust that. That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, straight away, I was like, we'll increase the spend by £5,000 or whatever it was. Like, nope, no, they won't. That's just a random number they've plucked out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, I think so many people are trying to sell that stuff, and I am
Yeah.
right along there with you. I am so skeptical straight away.
A lot of it, and like I said earlier, I think you just have to do your own research about everything because we're in such a new space. And I mean, there are sort of some experts, but like normal SEOs, I guess, like us, nobody knows exactly is what is the right thing to do. It is a lot of sort of let's try this and see what happens at the end of it. And there's sort of broad recommendations you can make, but things where there's no evidence whatsoever to back that up, I think I really don't agree with giving sort of recommendations like that to clients. I think maybe I'm just too honest of a person, but, but I can't justify telling a client something if it's not actually going to help them. Why? What's the point? You know?
The industry needs more honest people, mate. We need to balance the other guys out, right? Right, let's get into some agentic search things. I think there is a lot of crossover with what we've already talked about, obviously, but there are a couple of nuances and stuff like that. You already mentioned the ACP and the UCP and things like that. And I guess I kind of want to get into a broader discussion of, do you think agentic commerce is coming soon? And do you think it will be the future of the way we buy things on the web in the next couple of years? Do you think it is kind of going to become the dominant method of e-commerce in the future?
I think it's going to be a new channel. Personally, I can't see it becoming sort of replacing traditional shopping because sort of for purchases, you're still going to have to sort of browse, compare, look at trust signals, things like that. I think where it's really going to grow is more sort of repeat purchases where you know what you're getting already. Because I think we've seen a lot of it, the trust between humans and an AI output, it's not necessarily there yet because I think even sort of the general population that don't work in tech are still very aware of like the hallucinations that AI can make. And I think that's maybe negatively impacted the trust in which we have for them to handle our money and purchasing things. I think for sort of big ticket items, I can't see it sort of being the main channel, but I do see it being a channel. So therefore, we do need to focus on it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, mate. I think there's a lot of, again, maybe overhyping, people chasing the shiny AI thing, right? Of like, everybody is freaking out about AI agents taking over the world. And again, to quote Sundar Pichai, like, the future of the web could be agentic, is how Pichai put it. Like, I don't think enough people, maybe I'm wrong here, I feel like not enough people want something to do the browsing for them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will enjoy that completely frictionless experience. And even outside of e-commerce, right? Just browsing in general. But when it comes to e-commerce, I have so many reservations about this sort of stuff. Like you said, when it comes to the accuracy of information that LLMs can pull up, if
Yeah.
it's hallucinating stuff and that's literally costing you money or buying the wrong thing. And then there was an example, I can't remember what brand or what site it was. Somebody negotiated with like the AI chatbot of an e-commerce site to get an extra discount and then like received the invoice or whatever it was at the full price. I think it was like there's a 20% discount on the site and they negotiated it down to like a 50% discount because the AI chatbot was just like, yeah, cool, no problem, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, who's liable now? Like,
Yeah.
who's responsible? You adding the AI chatbot to your site, are you now like liable to whatever that thing says because you kind of installed it? Or is that absolutely mad because people could just say anything and then just get like free products and stuff? Or is the like, the company that made that chatbot responsible in that way as well? It's such a weird gray area for me, and I'm not sure people are ready for how much trouble that could cause, basically.
Yeah, I think sort of there is, because there's so many more touch points now. I think it it is going to be a channel, but whether it's going to be the channel, I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think we'll be there for quite a while, unless there's sort of a big change in sort of consumer mentality towards AI. I think.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything different that we need to think about when it comes to e-commerce sites for agentic stuff? Or is it mostly the similar kind of principles we were talking about earlier when it comes to just being factored into LLM and AI search?
Yeah, I think auditing your checkout process, I think that's
Mm,
something that would be really useful. Sort of ensuring it's secure, making sure that it's sort of frictionless and that an AI agent can actually check out on your site. Obviously, that would be sort of the main thing. And again, I know I've talked loads about structured data and product data and things, but having clear product data, I think that's still number one for me. And sort of having easily accessible sort of shipping data, returns data, pricing,
mm.
all that type of thing, and making sure that all of that's machine readable. I think that's sort of the baseline of what you need to be doing to ensure that you're ready for agentic commerce.
It's a really good point. I don't think I've heard many people talk about having a clear checkout process and a secure one. And I have had it before with clients years ago before I even thought about AI agents existing. Just like, um, do you know your checkout process doesn't actually work, or like it crashes at this point, or whatever it is? And I know a lot of it doesn't seem like an SEO thing, doesn't seem like something you should be doing, but just having an idea of the kind of experience that a customer is going to go through on that site. For me, you mentioned earlier, like literally use view source and see how crawlers see the site.
Yeah,
Seems like such a basic fundamental thing that I think so many of us forget to do those initial things of like, what do people actually see? Be a user, be a customer on the site, and actually click around and try to use it. And
yeah,
you can pick up on so many things like checkout processes will never be picked up in a crawl. You can do all of the tech audits you want. It will never go, oh, by the way, when you click the Google Pay button, you haven't connected it properly, so it doesn't work properly.
yeah,
Or, all those little extra bits that are hidden behind, you know, so many people have that blocked in their robots.txt, right? They have the, you know, I don't know, checkout or cart or basket or whatever blocked in that sense as well. That's a really good point, man. I really like that. Being aware of your checkout process and how secure it is and how it works.
yeah.
Seems
Like
important
mapping
for e-commerce, right?
out, I was in just mapping out your checkout flow and how everything
Yeah.
works, and how everything feeds into each other, and sort of that you have sort of a linear flow. You don't have any
Mm.
sort of loops or any redirects. And looking at your payment methods and your payment providers, and making sure that they're sort of secure and more the widely used ones, um, and sort of less friction. So you don't have pop-ups for creating an account. You don't have sort of a load of form filling in. You don't have all these sort of pop-ups that are sort of dynamic things in that checkout process, simplifying it as much as possible.
Yep, definitely, definitely. And I guess the last thing, I think for me, I've seen a lot of the agentic side of things, a lot of the announcements from OpenAI and Google talk about we have so many great partners we're working with for this process. And it's always massive, massive companies, your Shopify's, your Walmart's, these huge household names, basically. I've had conversations with clients before, and I've seen other people in the industry, and I've kind of had this thought myself, like, does that mean small businesses, people who aren't using Shopify, people who aren't Walmart, do they still stand a chance of competing in agentic search? How are you feeling about that? Have you had that conversation with clients, or are you thinking about that in terms of the future of agentic e-commerce as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a client come to me and say because their platform's Aero, not Shopify, that they'd like to do a full site migration because they don't think that they're going to be sort of viewable or anything in AI. And I think there's a lot of not misinformation. I think they're going to have these partnerships to start with, and it's going to roll out with these big partnerships. But further down the line, I mean, you can apply to become a merchant for OpenAI. I've signed all of my clients up for that. We're just waiting to hear back on that. I think sort of leaning into your USP and what your specialism is in your site. I don't think necessarily that you need to be on a big platform. You need to be a big brand. Because sort of these big brands, I know everyone sort of looks at John Lewis as like the major, so many clients come to me, I want my site to be like John Lewis. I like John Lewis category, I get that a lot. And I think so they're across so many different areas. And if your e-commerce brand is sort of a niche, you're not going to compete with a large brand, but you have that specialism and that sort of niche in that one area, as opposed to sort of the generalism of a big brand. And I think sort of agents really prioritize sort of relevance, authority, and trust. And if you can demonstrate that in your niche, then you're well on your way, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's kind of again the David kind of Goliath kind of conversation we always have with e-commerce clients, right? I've had so many clients that have been so much smaller than the industry leaders or the household name in that industry, but like you said, relevancy, being specific with what separates you, focusing on things like USPs and UGC and all that kind of stuff can make such a big difference. And like you said, building trust with your audience is fundamental marketing, basically marketing 101. Like that is the goal, and getting repeat customers and all that kind of stuff doesn't seem like SEO, but that really does factor into so much of what we do, I think. And a lot of people kind of underestimate, you just treat like EAT as a thing, but then actually customer trust is such a big factor in
Yeah.
purchasing and repurchasing as well.
Yeah. And I think as well, when you think about sort of OpenAI as as a business model, they're not going to sort of only sort of surface and only focus on sort of one platform of e-commerce. They're going to open it up to everyone, because it would be silly not to do that. Like, it's a business model at the end of the day. And I think sort of people are a bit more narrow-minded and think I need to be on a big platform right now. But it's going to be opened up to everyone. So I don't see why people would feel, the need to migrate immediately, when everything that they're preparing Shopify sites for agentic commerce, we can do the same preparation on any other platform.
Definitely. Yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on. I like to finish every episode with some recommendations. It's the same 3 questions every single time. And I guess I'll kick things off with, what's one actionable thing you think the viewers and listeners need to start doing right now, Dana?
My one actionable thing would be do a product page audit, like right now. Is your structured data present and correct? Are all the specifications, the dimensions, the use cases, compatibility, is all of that clear and readable? And also think about sort of, as a human, can a human understand what this product is? Can they go on this product page and immediately understand what this product is, who it's for, why, like what are the benefits, who's it recommended for and by? because if a human can do that, then the AI can do that.
100%, mate. Absolutely. Next up, recommend piece of software, tool, anything like that you think more people need to be checking out.
Yeah, I really love Ahrefs brand mentions, unlinked brand mentions. I think it's really useful for sort of helping your brand building strategy, because you can see where you're already mentioned, and so you can then sort of build a library of sort of similar places to get new brand mentions, and you can also reach out to claim sort of any links from the unlinked brand mentions as well, even though, as we know now, sort of brand mentions are, if not as important, nearly as important as sort of backlinks for sort of AI visibility. And also, I love also asked for sort of query fan out for content for AI visibility as well.
Nice. Appreciate the also asked chat out there, mate. Always appreciate that. And yeah, I think you're totally right. Like unlinked mentions is something we've talked about a lot when I have people from the digital PR and link building side of the industry on the show. The value of unlinked mentions, like you said, has kind of just gone up and up and up since we're also talking about brand and focusing on the LLM and AI search side of things, but also again, kind of classic marketing 101 stuff of like, what are people saying about you? Where are they saying it? What are people saying? What are the words around your brand that people are saying? Is it always cheap or good or bad or whatever? That factors in so much. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Don't just, backlink audit your site. Actually think about the unlinked mention side of things as well is a really good way of thinking about it. Last but not least, recommend something you've enjoyed recently. Not SEO or anything like that. Can be a film, a book, a podcast, a band, whatever you're into. What have you been enjoying recently?
I've recently discovered a snack called Kelly. It's from Ghana. I've recently come back from Ghana. It's fried plantain, fried in like Scotch bonnets and sort of onions. It's so good. I've been learning to make it at home. I've been feeding everyone it. It's my new favorite thing. Probably not the healthiest, but yeah, number one snack at the moment.
Amazing. I've tried plantain for the first time a couple of years ago, I think, and absolutely loved it. And now I'm so intrigued to try this. I'm not good with spicy stuff, but I'm intrigued to I'm intrigued to try it nonetheless. I'm always enthusiastic.
It'll get rid of the spiciness. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Is there a particular recipe or anything like that? Is there anything I can point all the viewers and listeners at a particular place or anything like that?
Honestly, I don't know. I learned from my partner's mother how to make it. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Go and talk to your partner's mum and find out. That is often the secret to a good recipe.
Yeah, it'll be a good recipe site online.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dena. It's been a really, really fun conversation. Where can people keep up with you? Where can people follow you and keep up with what you're doing in SEO, what Techquity is doing, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, just on LinkedIn. So it's Dena Warren on LinkedIn and Techquity as well. And our site's just techquity.co.uk.
Awesome. Go and follow Dena. Go and check out Techquity, everybody. And yeah, thank you once again for joining me. It's been a really, really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
And that wraps up this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Had a really, really fun conversation with Dena. And yeah, I think I'm going to have some really fun conversations coming up in the not too distant future as well. Of course, Mark and I will be back in the studio. I'm going to be talking all about a recent study that Chris Green, who has been on the show many times before, did with Also Asked, talking about how answering people also ask questions correlates to organic rankings. Chris has done a brilliant breakdown in an article on alsoasked.com, and there is also a YouTube video of me breaking down and discussing things with Chris on there as well, so you can go and listen to that conversation. I'll put a link for both of those things in the show notes down below. If you haven't already, please do go and follow Dena and Techquity and all those guys. They're doing some fantastic work over there. Huge thanks once again to Dena for joining me, and a huge thanks to you for watching and listening, wherever you're watching and listening. That is about it for this week. I will see you next week. Have a lovely week and enjoy March. It's the start of March. It feels like we're already heading towards the end of Q1 in 2026, and that feels so crazy to say already. If you haven't already, very last thing, Search Norwich XL is happening on the 24th of September 2026. You can go and sign up for updates to know when the early bird tickets are available. It's going to be fairly soon, maybe in like a few weeks. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And you can go and sign up there, searchnorwich.org. Again, I'll put a link for that in the show notes as well. And yeah, just sign up for the newsletter. It's me, it's Mark. We'll send you some updates and things like that. We won't spam you or anything. And you can find out about when the speakers are announced. You can find out when tickets are going to be available and all that other wonderful stuff as well. And there will be a pretty significant early bird discount for tickets if you do get in within that early time period as well, which I'm not going to disclose just yet. But anyway, thank you once again for watching and listening. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you next week.